Jake Thompson looked out the window of the transport ship and felt his jaw drop. The planet below was unlike anything he had ever seen. Crystal towers reached up into purple clouds, and silver rivers wound between floating gardens. This was Zephyros, Prime, homeworld of the Zephyrian Empire. "First time seeing an alien world?" asked Lisa Carter, the human ambassador sitting next to him. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been working with aliens for 5 years now. "Yeah," Jake said, still staring. "I can't believe I'm really here." Jake was 28 years old and worked as a cultural attaché for Earth's diplomatic service. His job was to learn about alien customs and help humans understand other species. He was good at adapting to new places, but he also had a habit of getting into trouble by accident. The ship landed at a massive spaceport made of white stone and blue metal. Tall, elegant aliens with pale blue skin and silver eyes waited to greet them. These were the Zephyrians. They wore flowing robes that seemed to move on their own, and their voices sounded like singing when they spoke. "Welcome, honored guests. From Earth," said the lead Zephyrian. "I am Minister Valkes. The Emperor is pleased to have you here for our cultural exchange." Lisa stepped forward and bowed in the Zephyrian style, touching her forehead with both hands. Jake copied her, hoping he was doing it right. The Zephyrians seemed pleased. They were taken to a huge palace that looked like it was made of carved moonlight. The walls glowed softly, and strange music played from hidden speakers. Jake tried not to gawk like a tourist, but everything was so beautiful and alien. "Your rooms are ready," Minister Valkes said. "Tonight there is a cultural demonstration in the Palace of Echoes. You will learn much about our ways." Jake was given a small device that would translate Zephyrian writing. He was also handed an invitation written on what looked like liquid silver. The writing flowed and changed as he watched it, making him feel dizzy. "The Palace of Echoes," Jake read slowly. 7 bells after sunset. That evening, Jake put on his best diplomatic clothes and made his way through the palace. The problem was that the palace was enormous, with hundreds of corridors that all looked the same. The walls were covered with murals that moved and changed, showing scenes from Zephyrian history. Jake followed signs that his translator said led to the Palace of Echoes, but the writing kept shifting. Sometimes it said Palace of Echoes and sometimes it said Palace of Hearts. Jake figured it was just a translation error. He found a grand hall with massive doors covered in jewels that sparkled like stars. Zephyrians in fancy robes were going inside, so Jake followed them. He was already 15 minutes late and didn't want to miss the cultural demonstration. Inside, the hall was breathtaking. The ceiling was clear crystal that showed the night sky above. Thousands of Zephyrians sat in curved seats that floated in the air without any support. At the center was a raised platform surrounded by floating lights. Jake found an empty floating seat near the back and sat down carefully. The seat was surprisingly comfortable and warm. Around him, Zephyrians whispered in their musical language. Jake's translator was having trouble keeping up with all the voices. On the platform, 2 figures appeared in beams of light. One was a tall Zephyrian male with dark blue skin and a crown of silver spikes. The other was a female with lighter blue skin and hair that looked like flowing water. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of starlight. "The union of Prince Kethmorin and Princess Zarathis begins," announced a voice that echoed through the hall. Jake blinked in confusion. This didn't sound like a cultural demonstration. It sounded like a wedding. He looked around nervously and noticed that all the Zephyrians were dressed much more formally than he had expected. The ceremony began with chanting and music that made Jake's bones vibrate. The princess and prince stood facing each other while Zephyrian priests in golden robes walked in circles around them. Jake tried to slip out quietly, but his floating seat wouldn't move. It seemed to be locked in place once the ceremony started. The princess was beautiful in an alien way, with large silver eyes and graceful movements. But she looked sad, Jake thought. She kept glancing at the crowd instead of looking at her groom. The prince, on the other hand, looked proud and cold. The priest began calling for the witnesses of the heart to stand and participate in the bonding ritual. Around Jake, Zephyrians stood up and raised their hands toward the couple. Not wanting to stand out or cause a diplomatic incident, Jake stood up too and copied their movements. The priests chanted louder, and the floating lights around the platform began to spin faster. Jake felt a strange tingling in his hands as he held them up. The princess suddenly looked directly at him across the crowd. Their eyes met, and Jake felt an odd sensation, like electricity running through his body. "Let the souls choose their true bonds," the priests sang together. The light suddenly blazed brighter, and streams of golden energy flowed from every witness toward the couple. But something went wrong. Instead of the energy flowing to both, the prince and princess, most of it flowed only to the princess. Even stranger, a thick beam of golden light shot from Jake's hands directly to her. The princess gasped and stumbled. The prince looked around in confusion and anger. The priests stopped chanting and stared in shock. The entire hall fell silent except for the humming of the golden energy that still connected Jake to the princess. "What is happening?" the prince demanded. The head priest, an ancient Zephyrian with white skin and golden eyes, approached the platform, slowly. He examined the energy flows with instruments that appeared in his hands. His face grew pale. "The bonding of souls has chosen," he announced in a shaking voice, "but not as we expected. The princess is bound to the human witness, not to Prince Catamaran." Jake felt his stomach drop. "I'm sorry, what now?" The entire crowd began talking at once, their musical voices creating a chaotic symphony. The prince's face turned dark purple, with rage. The princess looked at Jake with wide, shocked eyes. "This is impossible," the prince shouted. "I demand this mockery be stopped." But the head priest shook his head sadly. "The ancient laws are clear. The bonding of souls cannot be broken once completed. The human has become the princess's bonded mate according to our most sacred traditions." Jake sat down heavily in his floating chair, his head spinning. "I just wanted to watch a cultural demonstration," he said weakly. The princess stepped forward, her voice clear and strong despite her obvious shock. "Father," she called to a figure on a golden throne that Jake hadn't noticed before. "What does our law say about this situation?" The emperor, a massive Zephyrian with a crown of living crystal, stood slowly. His voice boomed through the hall. "Our laws are ancient and absolute, my daughter. You are now bonded to this human whether we planned it or not." Jake looked around the hall at hundreds of staring alien faces. Some looked angry, some looked curious, and some looked amused. The prince looked like he wanted to kill something, preferably Jake. "I think," Jake said quietly to himself, "I may have made a very big mistake." Jake woke up in a room that was bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed was made of some kind of crystal that was somehow soft and warm. For a moment he thought he had been dreaming. Then he saw his reflection in the mirror wall and remembered everything. He was married to an alien princess. A soft chime sounded, and the wall opened to reveal a Zephyrian servant carrying a tray of what Jake hoped was breakfast. The food looked like glowing fruit and silver bread, but it smelled good. "Your Highness," the servant said, bowing deeply. "Princess Zarathis requests your presence in the Garden of Thinking when you are ready." Jake almost choked on the glowing fruit, which tasted like strawberries mixed with starlight. "Your Highness, me?" "Yes, sir. You are now Prince Consort of the Zephyrian Empire." After the servant left, Jake sat on the edge of the crystal bed and put his head in his hands. Yesterday he had been a simple diplomat. Now he was alien royalty, married to someone he had never even spoken to. A knock on his door interrupted his panic. Jake opened it to find Ambassador Lisa Carter looking very tired and very stressed. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, walking into his room without waiting for an invitation. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Accidentally married an alien princess? You've created the biggest diplomatic crisis in human history," Lisa said, sitting down in a chair that molded itself to fit her. "Prince Catamaran has gone back to his kingdom and is telling everyone that humans are trying to take over the Zephyrian Empire. 3 other alien governments have already sent angry messages to Earth." Jake felt sick. "Can't we just explain it was an accident?" "We're trying. But Zephyrian law is very clear. The bonding of souls cannot be undone easily. There is something called a trial of dissolution, but it's dangerous. People have died attempting it. What kind of trial? Nobody knows exactly. The Zephyrians are being very secretive about it. All we know is that both you and the princess would have to face it together, and there's no guarantee you'd both survive. Jake stood up and began pacing around the huge room. This is insane. I just wanted to learn about alien culture, not become part of it. Well, you're definitely learning about it now, Lisa said dryly. The Emperor wants to meet with me in an hour. Try not to cause any more diplomatic incidents while I'm gone. After Lisa left, Jake made his way to the Garden of Thinking. It turned out to be a beautiful outdoor space filled with plants that hummed softly and flowers that changed colors based on the emotions of people nearby. Princess Zarathis sat on a bench made of living wood, staring at a pond where fish with wings flew just above the water. She was even more beautiful in daylight, but she looked sad and tired. When she saw Jake approaching, she straightened up and tried to look royal. "Good morning," Jake said awkwardly. "I'm Jake Thompson. I guess we should probably talk. I am Princess Zarathis, though I suppose you know that already." Her voice was musical like all Zephyrians, but there was sadness in it. "Please sit down." Jake sat on the bench, careful to leave space between them. "I want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. I was supposed to be watching a cultural demonstration, not attending your wedding." "I know," the princess said quietly. "I could tell from your thoughts during the bonding that you were confused and frightened." "You can read my thoughts?" "Only during the bonding ceremony. It is part of the ritual." "I know that you are a good person, Jake Thompson. You were only trying to be polite and not cause trouble." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flying fish. Finally, Jake asked, "Were you happy about marrying Prince Kethmoran?" Princess Zara looked surprised by the question. "Happy? It was my duty. I was born to make alliances for my people. My personal feelings were not important." "That doesn't answer my question." The princess studied him for a long moment. "No, I was not happy. Kethmoran is cruel and ambitious. He wanted to marry me to gain power over the Zephyrian Empire, but refusing would have meant war. And now? Now there will probably be war anyway, but for different reasons." She turned to face him fully. "Jake Thompson, I must ask you something important. Are you willing to try the trial of dissolution to free us both from this bond?" Jake thought about it. The smart thing would be to say yes. He could go back to Earth, forget this whole mess, and return to his normal life. But looking at Princess Zara, he found himself thinking about how sad she had looked at her own wedding, and how she had been willing to sacrifice her happiness for her people. "Can I ask you something first?" Jake said. "If we don't do the trial, what happens?" "We remain bonded. You would become Prince Consort and help me rule the Empire someday. You would have to learn our ways and live here permanently. And if we do the trial and survive, we would both be free to choose our own paths. You could return to Earth and I could rule alone." Jake noticed that she didn't mention marrying someone else. "You don't want to get married again, do you?" Princess Zara looked surprised again. "How did you know that?" "Lucky guess. You seem like someone who values freedom. Freedom is not something royalty usually gets to have," she said softly. Their conversation was interrupted by shouting from inside the palace. Jake and the princess ran toward the noise and found a crowd gathered around the main communication center. On a huge screen, Prince Kethmoran was making a speech to his people. "The Zephyrian Empire has been contaminated by alien influence," he was saying, his face twisted with anger. "Princess Zarathis has been corrupted by human trickery. We cannot allow this insult to stand. All loyal subjects of the galaxy must unite to cleanse this contamination." "He's calling for war," Princess Zara whispered. Admiral Quindaros, a stern-looking Zephyrian with scars on his face, approached them. "Your Highness, we are receiving reports that Prince Kethmoran has formed an alliance with the Nexari Kingdom and 2 other systems. They are demanding that the human be handed over to them for punishment." "Over my dead body," Princess Zara said firmly. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest at her words, but he also felt guilty. Maybe I should just go with them. I don't want to cause a war. Absolutely not, the princess said, grabbing his arm. You are under the protection of the Zephyrian Empire now. We do not surrender our people to enemies. Admiral Quindaros looked at Jake with obvious suspicion. Your Highness, perhaps it would be better to consider the trial of dissolution. The human's presence is causing too much trouble. The decision is mine to make, Admiral, Princess Zara said coldly. And I have not yet decided what path to take. That evening, Jake found himself in another impossible situation. Having dinner with the Emperor of an alien empire. Emperor Veltaran was enormous even for a Zephyrian, with skin that shifted from blue to purple as his mood changed. He studied Jake like a scientist examining a new species. So, young human, the Emperor said, what do you think of our food? Jake looked down at his plate, which held something that looked like purple pasta covered in sauce that sparkled. It actually tasted pretty good. It's delicious, Your Majesty, very sparkly. The Emperor laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. You are honest. I like that. Tell me, do you think my daughter should do the trial of dissolution? Jake nearly choked on his sparkly pasta. Your Majesty, I don't think it's my place to make that decision. But you are part of the decision now. The trial requires both participants to agree to it. Jake looked across the table at Princess Zara, who was watching him carefully. If we don't do the trial, there will be war, won't there? Possibly, the Emperor admitted. But there might be war, even if you do the trial. Kethmaran and his allies are angry and looking for any excuse to cause trouble. Then maybe the question isn't whether to do the trial, Jake said slowly. Maybe the question is how to stop a war. Emperor Veltaran's skin shifted to a lighter purple, which Jake hoped was a good sign. Interesting perspective. What do you suggest? Jake realized that everyone was staring at him, waiting for his answer. A few days ago, the biggest decision he had to make was what to have for lunch. Now he was being asked to help prevent an interstellar war. I don't know yet, Jake said honestly. But maybe if I'm going to be Prince Consort, I should start learning how to think like one. Princess Zara smiled for the first time since he had met her. Now that, she said, is the most intelligent thing anyone has said since this whole mess began. 3 weeks had passed since Jake's accidental marriage, and he was starting to feel less like a confused tourist and more like someone who might actually belong in an alien palace. Princess Zara had been teaching him about Zephyrian history and customs while he had been sharing stories about human culture and Earth. So humans really eat something called pizza? Princess Zara asked as they walked through the royal library. The books here were made of crystal that projected words and pictures into the air when touched. Not just eat it. We practically worship it, Jake said, grinning. Back home, my friend Ben and I had pizza every Friday night for 10 years straight. And this pizza brings your people together? In a way, yeah. It's comfort food. Simple, warm, and better when shared with friends. Princess Zara looked thoughtful. Perhaps we could try making this pizza for the royal kitchen staff. They have been working very hard lately with all the extra security measures. Jake had learned that the princess genuinely cared about everyone in the palace, from the highest nobles to the servants who cleaned the floors. It was one of many things he was beginning to admire about her. That afternoon, Jake found himself in the strangest cooking lesson of his life. The Zephyrian kitchen was filled with floating ovens and ingredient dispensers that responded to thought commands. The head chef, a round Zephyrian named Cook Melthus, was both fascinated and horrified by Jake's description of pizza. You put cheese on bread and heat it? Cook Melthus asked, her silver eyes wide. That is all? Well, you can add other things. Tomato sauce, meat, vegetables. The beauty is in its simplicity. 2 hours later, they had created something that looked sort of like pizza, if pizza was made with blue cheese that glowed, and toppings that included what Jake hoped were vegetables. The kitchen staff gathered around nervously as Princess Zara took the first bite. Her face lit up with surprise and delight. It is wonderful. warm and comforting, just as Jake described. Soon the entire kitchen staff was laughing and sharing the strange human food. Jake felt a warm glow watching Princess Zara smile and joke with the servants. She wasn't acting like a royal princess. She was just being herself. Later that evening, Jake was in his room trying to understand a Zephyrian book about interstellar politics when his door chimed. Princess Zara entered, looking troubled. "We need to talk," she said, sitting in the chair that had learned to adjust itself for human visitors. "I received some disturbing news today." "How disturbing?" "Prince Kethmaran has convinced the Nexari Kingdom and 3 other systems to form a trade blockade against us. No ships are being allowed to enter or leave Zephyrian space." Jake set down his book. "That's an act of war, isn't it?" "Technically, yes, but my father doesn't want to be the first to fire weapons. He hopes we can find a peaceful solution." "What kind of solution?" Princess Zara was quiet for a long moment. "The other kingdoms are demanding that I undergo the trial of dissolution. They say our bonding is unnatural and threatens the stability of the galaxy." Jake felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Over the past 3 weeks, he and Princess Zara had become genuine friends. The idea of losing that friendship, or worse, watching her die in some ancient trial, made him feel sick. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "The trial is dangerous, but if we don't do it, there will definitely be war. Thousands of people could die." "Tell me about this trial. What exactly happens?" Princess Zara stood up and walked to the window that showed the night sky above the palace. "It takes place in the Temple of Truth, an ancient building that was built by the first Zephyrians. The temple has something called the Maze of Echoes inside it. Those who enter the maze face tests that reveal their true hearts and minds." "What kind of tests?" "No one knows for certain. The few who have survived the trial refuse to speak about what they experienced. All we know is that the maze shows people their deepest fears and greatest desires. Many cannot handle what they see and become lost forever." Jake joined her at the window. Below them, the capital city sparkled with millions of lights. "And if we both survive? Then our bonding would be dissolved, and we would be free to choose our own paths. But if one of us doesn't survive, then the other dies as well. That is the law of the bonding." They stood in silence, looking out at the peaceful city that might soon be at war. Jake found himself thinking about his old life on Earth. It had been simple and safe, but also kind of empty. Here, even with all the danger and confusion, he felt like he was part of something important. "Zara," he said quietly, "can I ask you something personal? We are bonded. You can ask me anything. If there was no war, no political pressure, no trade blockades, what would you want to do?" Princess Zara turned to look at him, surprise in her silver eyes. "No one has ever asked me that question before." "Well, I'm asking now." She was quiet for so long that Jake thought she might not answer. Finally, she said, "I would want to explore the galaxy, visit new worlds, meet different species, learn about their cultures. I have spent my entire life preparing to rule, but I have never seen anything beyond this planet." "That sounds amazing. What about you? What would you want to do?" Jake thought about it. "I guess I'd want to keep doing what I'm doing now, learning about different cultures, helping people understand each other. But maybe on a bigger scale. You want to be a bridge between species." "Yeah, something like that." Princess Zara smiled. "You are already doing that, Jake. In 3 weeks, you have changed how my people think about humans. The kitchen staff adores you. The palace guards respect you. Even Admiral Quindaros has stopped calling you the alien contamination. He was calling me that? Only behind your back. Now he calls you the surprisingly useful human. I'm moving up in the world." Their moment of humor was interrupted by urgent knocking on the door. Admiral Quindaros entered without waiting for permission, his face grim. "Your Highness, we have a problem. Prince Kethmoran's fleet has attacked one of our border colonies. The colony of New This has been destroyed." Princess Zara went very still. How many casualties? The entire population. 50,000 civilians. Jacob felt the blood drain from his face. They killed 50,000 people? Prince Kethmaran is claiming it was necessary to cleanse the contamination of human influence, Admiral Quindaros said, his voice filled with disgust. He says he will continue attacking colonies until the human is handed over. Princess Zara's skin began to glow with anger, something Jake had never seen before. He murdered civilians to make a political point? It appears so, Your Highness. Jake sank into a chair, feeling overwhelmed with guilt. This is my fault. All those people died because of me. No, Princess Zara said firmly, turning to face him. They died because Prince Kethmaran is a monster who was looking for an excuse to start a war. If it hadn't been you, he would have found another reason. Your Highness, Admiral Quindaros said. The Emperor is calling an emergency council meeting. All senior military and political leaders are required to attend. We'll be right there, Princess Zara said. After the Admiral left, Jake stood up slowly. I know what I have to do. Jake, no. I'll turn myself over to them. It's the only way to stop this. Princess Zara grabbed his hands, her skin warm and slightly glowing. Listen to me very carefully. If you try to sacrifice yourself, I will never forgive you. We are bonded, which means we face this together. But all those people died because we have an enemy who doesn't care about innocent lives. The best way to honor their memory is to stop him, not to give him what he wants. Jake looked into her silver eyes and saw determination, anger, and something else that made his heart skip a beat. You're right. Of course I am. I'm a princess. She managed a small smile. Now come on. We have a war council to attend. As they walked toward the council chamber, Jake realized that something had changed between them. They weren't just accidentally bonded strangers anymore. They were partners, facing an impossible situation together. The council chamber was filled with Zephyrian military leaders and nobles all talking at once in worried voices. When Princess Zara and Jake entered, the room fell silent. Emperor Velteron sat on his crystal throne, looking older and more tired than Jake had ever seen him. My daughter, the Emperor said, Prince Kethmaran has sent us a message. He demands that we hand over the human within 7 days, or he will attack the capital planet itself. Let him come, Princess Zara said, her voice ringing through the chamber. We will not surrender an innocent person to a murderer. Admiral Quindaros stepped forward. Your Highness, our fleet is strong, but the combined forces of 4 systems will be difficult to defeat. Perhaps we should consider the trial of dissolution. The trial could kill them both. Another noble protested. And refusing could kill us all, a general replied. Jake listened to the arguments flying back and forth, feeling the weight of an entire civilization's future pressing down on him. Finally, he stood up. If I may, he said loudly. The room fell, silent again. I think you're all asking the wrong question. Emperor Velteron raised an eyebrow. What question should we be asking, young human? Not whether Princess Zara and I should do the trial, Jake said, but whether we should do it on our terms or theirs. The Temple of Truth stood on a mountain peak 50 miles from the capital city. It was older than recorded history, built from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered its walls, and the air around it hummed with energy that made Jake's teeth ache. Are you sure about this? Princess Zara asked as their transport landed near the temple entrance. Jake looked at the ancient building and felt his stomach twist with fear. No, but I'm sure about doing it with you instead of being forced into it by Prince Kethmaran. 2 days had passed since the council meeting. Jake's suggestion to attempt the trial of dissolution on their own terms had shocked everyone. Instead of waiting for their enemies to force them into it, they would face the trial now, while they still had some control over the situation. Emperor Velteron stepped out of the transport behind them, along with Ambassador Lisa Carter and a small group of witnesses. The Emperor had insisted on being present despite the danger. The temple has been sealed for 300 years, Emperor Velteron said, looking up at the massive doors. The last couple to attempt the trial never came out. Very encouraging, Dad, Princess Zara muttered. Lisa Carter approached Jake looking worried. I still think this is insane. Earth's government wanted me to talk you out of it. And what did? You tell them? That you never listen to good advice anyway. Lisa managed a small smile. Just try to come back alive, okay? I don't want to explain to your mother how I lost you to an alien temple. The temple doors opened with a grinding sound that seemed to echo from the mountain itself. Inside, the walls glowed with a soft blue light that hurt to look at directly. At the center of the temple was an opening in the floor, with stairs leading down into darkness. An ancient Zephyrian priest emerged from the shadows. He was so old that his skin had turned white as snow, and his eyes were completely silver. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind through empty spaces. The bonded ones have come to face the maze of echoes, the priest said. Do you understand what you are asking? We understand the risks, Princess Zara replied. Risk? The priest laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Child, risk is when you might lose something you have. In the maze, you will face things you never knew existed. Many who enter never find their way back to who they were. Jake swallowed hard. What exactly will we face down there? The maze shows truth. Your deepest fears, your greatest shames, your most desperate desires. It will try to break you by showing you exactly who you really are. And if we pass, if you both survive with your minds intact, the maze will judge whether your bonding is true or false. If false, it will be dissolved. If true, the priest shrugged. No bonding judged true has ever been dissolved. Princess Zara took Jake's hand. We're ready. No one is ever ready, the priest said. But you may begin. They descended the stairs together, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Behind them, the opening sealed itself, cutting off the last bit of natural light. The walls of the stairway began to glow with the same blue light as the temple above. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a vast underground chamber. The floor was made of mirror black stone that reflected their images perfectly. In front of them stood an archway that seemed to be made of liquid shadow. The entrance to the maze, Princess Zara whispered. As they stepped through the archway, Jake felt the world shift around him. The chamber disappeared, replaced by a corridor that stretched endlessly in both directions. The walls were covered with mirrors that showed not their reflections, but images of their memories. Jake, Princess Zara said, but her voice sounded far away even though she was right beside him. I'm here, he replied. But when he turned to look at her, she was gone. Jake found himself alone in the corridor of mirrors. The images on the walls began to move, showing scenes from his life. He saw himself as a child afraid to speak up in class. As a teenager, too scared to ask a girl to the school dance. As an adult, always playing it safe, never taking real risks. You have spent your entire life being afraid, a voice said from everywhere and nowhere. Afraid to fail, afraid to succeed, afraid to truly live. The mirrors began showing different images now. Jake saw himself back on Earth living his quiet, safe life. Never traveling to alien worlds, never meeting Princess Zara, never becoming anything more than a minor diplomat processing paperwork. This could still be your future, the voice whispered. Safe, predictable, empty. Maybe empty is better than getting people killed, Jake said to the mirrors. Ah, guilt, my favorite emotion. The voice laughed. You blame yourself for the deaths at New This. 50,000 people died because of your mistake. The mirrors now showed the destroyed colony. Bodies floating in space, burned buildings, crying children. Jake fell to his knees as the guilt crashed over him like a wave. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he whispered. Intent doesn't matter to the dead, the voice said cruelly. You will carry their blood on your hands forever. Jake closed his eyes, trying to block out the horrible images. But in the darkness, he heard another voice, Princess Zara's voice from their conversation weeks ago. They died because Prince Kethamaran is a monster who was looking for an excuse to start a war. Jake opened his eyes and stood up slowly. "You're wrong," he said to the mirrors. "I didn't kill those people. Kethmoran did. And feeling guilty about it won't bring them back." The images of the destroyed colony faded, replaced by new scenes. Jake saw himself and Princess Zara working together, laughing together, facing problems as a team. He saw the kitchen staff smiling as they shared pizza. He saw Admiral Quindaros, nodding with respect. "I'm not perfect," Jake said to the voice. "I make mistakes, but I'm trying to do good, and I'm not going to let fear stop me." The corridor of mirrors dissolved, and Jake found himself in a new space. It looked like the palace garden where he and Princess Zara had first talked, but the plants were withered and dying. Princess Zara sat on the bench, but she looked different. Older, sadder, broken. "You left me," this version of Princess Zara said without looking at him. "The trial dissolved our bonding, and you went back to your safe little life on Earth." "That's not what I want," Jake said. "Isn't it?" The sad Princess Zara finally looked at him. "You never asked to be bonded to me. You never asked to become a prince. You never asked for any of this responsibility." Jake sat down beside her, even though she felt cold and unreal. "No, I didn't ask for it, but that doesn't mean I want to give it up." "Why not? You could be free." Jake thought about all the conversations he'd had with the real Princess Zara, about her dreams of exploring the galaxy, her kindness to the servants, her strength in the face of impossible choices. "Because freedom doesn't mean much if you're alone," he said, "and because He stopped, realizing something he hadn't fully understood until now. "Because I love her." The sad Princess Zara smiled, and suddenly she was the real one, warm and alive. "And I love you," she said. The dying garden bloomed around them, becoming more beautiful than the real palace garden had ever been. But even as Jake felt joy at her words, the scene began to fade. "The maze has one more test," Princess Zara said as the garden disappeared. They found themselves in a vast space filled with floating platforms connected by bridges of light. On the platforms, Jake could see scenes from possible futures. In one, he and Princess Zara ruled the Zephyrian Empire together, bringing peace to the galaxy. In another, they traveled among the stars, exploring new worlds. In yet another, they lived quietly on Earth, far from politics and danger. "Choose," the voice of the maze commanded. "Which future do you desire most?" Jake looked at all the beautiful possibilities, then at Princess Zara. She was looking at the same futures, her face filled with wonder and longing. "I don't get to choose," Jake said finally. "What?" Princess Zara looked at him in surprise. "We don't get to choose," Jake continued, speaking to the maze. "The future isn't something we pick from a menu. It's something we build together one day at a time." "You must choose," the voice insisted. "No," Princess Zara said, understanding. "Jake is right. We don't want a predetermined future. We want the chance to create our own." The floating platforms began to shake and crack. The voice of the maze roared in anger. "Impossible! You must choose." "We choose each other," Jake and Princess Zara said together. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The platforms exploded into light and Jake felt himself falling through space and time. Then suddenly he was standing in the temple chamber again. Princess Zara was beside him, her hand in his. The ancient priest stood before them, his silver eyes wide with shock. "In 3,000 years, the priest whispered, "no one has ever refused to choose a future." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. The priest looked at them for a long moment, then began to laugh. It was a sound of pure joy, not like the brittle laughter from before. "It means, young ones, that your bonding is not only true, it is perfect. The maze could not break you because you do not seek to possess each other or control your fate. You seek only to face life together." Emperor Velteron stepped forward from where he had been waiting. "Does this mean the trial is complete?" "More than complete," the priest said. "The maze has declared their bonding unbreakable. According to the oldest laws, This makes them not just married, but true partners in all things. Jake felt a warm. News of Jake and Princess Zara's successful trial spread across the galaxy faster than light. Within hours, the mood in the Zephyrian Empire had changed from despair to hope. The kitchen staff threw an impromptu celebration that lasted until dawn. Even Admiral Quindaros was seen smiling, which several people claimed was the first time in 20 years. But Prince Kethmaran was not pleased. The trial was a fraud, he declared, in a broadcast that reached every corner of known space. The humans have corrupted the sacred temple with their alien technology. This proves that they are a threat to all pure species in the galaxy. Jake watched the broadcast from the Palace Communications Center, feeling his good mood evaporate. He's really not going to give up, is he? Kethmaran has committed too many crimes to back down now, Admiral Quindaros said grimly. He destroyed New Thys colony. His own allies are starting to question him. Emperor Veltaran studied the tactical displays showing enemy fleet positions. The question is what he will do next. He has lost the moral argument, but he still has a large military force. Princess Zara, who had been quiet since they returned from the temple, suddenly straightened up. Father, may I see the intelligence reports on Kethmaran's allies? Of course, my daughter. Princess Zara read through the data quickly, her eyes growing brighter with each page. Jake, look at this. The Nexari Kingdom, the Stellar Collective, and the Rimworlds Federation have all sent ships to support Kethmaran, but look at the numbers. Jake studied the fleet compositions. They're not sending their best ships. Most of these are old vessels with minimal crews. Exactly. They're supporting him because they have to, not because they want to. If we could prove that Kethmaran has been lying to them. Admiral Quindaros leaned forward. What kind of lies? Princess Zara called up another display. According to our spies, Kethmaran told his allies that humans were planning to invade and conquer the galaxy. He said our bonding was the first step in a secret plan to take over all alien governments. That's ridiculous, Jake said. Earth barely has the technology to travel between star systems, let alone conquer them. We know that, Princess Zara said. But do his allies? Most of them have never met humans before. Jake felt an idea forming. What if we invited them to meet humans? Real ones, not Kethmaran's propaganda. Emperor Veltaran raised an eyebrow. You want to invite enemy forces to tea? Not tea, Jake said, grinning. Something better. Ambassador Carter, can you get a message to Earth? I need to talk to my friend Ben. 3 days later, the most unusual diplomatic mission in galactic history was underway. Ben Morgan had arrived from Earth aboard a human ship, along with 50 volunteers representing every aspect of human culture. Scientists, artists, teachers, doctors, even a professional chef who specialized in comfort food. You know, Ben said, as he hugged Jake in the palace landing bay. When you said you were going to learn about alien culture, I didn't expect you to marry into it. It's been a weird month, Jake admitted. Princess Zara approached them and Jake made introductions. Ben, this is my wife, Princess Zarathis. Zara, this is Ben, my best friend and the guy who convinced me to join the diplomatic service. Ben bowed awkwardly in what he hoped was the Zephyrian style. Your Highness, it's an honor to meet you. Jake's told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope, Princess Zara said with a smile. Mostly, though he did mention you could probably beat him in a fight. Easily, Princess Zara said, and Jake was pleased to see that she and Ben were going to get along fine. The plan they had developed was simple but risky. Instead of fighting Kethmaran's fleet, they would invite representatives from each allied species to visit the Zephyrian Empire and meet humans face to face. If they could prove that humans were not the evil invaders Kethmaran claimed, his alliance might fall apart. The first test came when a delegation from the Nexari Kingdom arrived. They were a species of tall, thin aliens with copper-colored skin and multiple arms. Their leader, Ambassador Thexkalar, looked like he expected humans to attack him at any moment. We have come to see these humans like for ourselves, Ambassador Thexkalar announced. Prince Kethmaran says they are dangerous predators who seek to dominate all other species. Jake stepped forward with Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the human volunteers. Dr. Kim was a pediatrician who had spent her career helping sick children. Ambassador Thex Kaller, Jake said. I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Kim. She's a healer who has dedicated her life to helping children recover from illness. Dr. Kim smiled and offered her hand to the Nexari ambassador. It's wonderful to meet you, Ambassador. I've read about Nexari medical techniques. Your people's ability to regenerate damaged tissue is incredible. Ambassador Thex Kaller stared at the offered hand suspiciously. You study our medical knowledge? For what purpose? To find weaknesses? To learn, Dr. Kim said simply. On Earth, we believe that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. If we could combine human and Nexari medical techniques, think of how many lives we could save. Over the next few hours, Dr. Kim and the human scientists shared their research with the Nexari delegation. They showed medical treatments, agricultural techniques, and artistic traditions. The Nexari, who had expected to meet warlike conquerors, instead found people who were genuinely interested in learning and sharing. By the end of the day, Ambassador Thex Kaller was laughing at jokes told by Jake's chef friend, who had prepared a fusion meal combining Earth and Nexari ingredients. Prince Kethmoran told us that humans see other species as inferior, Ambassador Thex Kaller said to Jake as the day ended. But your people treat us as equals, as friends. That's because we are friends, Jake said. We all share the same galaxy. We should be working together, not fighting. Similar scenes played out over the next week as delegations from other species arrived. The Stellar Collective, a group of crystalline beings who communicated through light patterns, were fascinated by human art and music. The Rim Worlds Federation, a collection of nomadic space dwellers, found common ground with human explorers and pioneers. But Prince Kethmoran was not going to give up easily. On the 7th day, as Jake was showing a group of young alien students how to play human games like chess and poker, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Admiral Quindaros rushed into the recreation hall where they had been playing. Your Highness, he said to Princess Zara, Kethmoran's fleet is approaching the capital system. He's demanding that all foreign delegations leave immediately or be considered enemy combatants. Jake felt his blood run cold. All week they had been building friendships and understanding with representatives from dozens of species. Now Kethmoran was going to destroy all that progress with violence. How long do we have? Princess Zara asked. 6 hours until his fleet reaches the outer planets. Jake stood up, his mind racing. Admiral, can you get me a communication link to Kethmoran's flagship? Jake, what are you planning? Princess Zara asked. Something probably stupid, Jake admitted. But maybe stupid enough to work. An hour later, Jake found himself on the main communication screen in the palace, speaking directly to Prince Kethmoran aboard his warship. The alien prince looked even angrier than before, his face twisted with rage. Human, Kethmoran snarled. You have corrupted enough minds with your lies. Surrender now and I will make your death quick. I have a better idea, Jake said calmly. How about we settle this with a challenge? What kind of challenge? Single combat. You and me. If you win, I'll surrender and go with you. If I win, you withdraw your fleet and end this war. Kethmoran laughed harshly. You think you can defeat a Nexari prince in combat? I am trained in 17 forms of martial arts and have never lost a duel. Maybe not, Jake said, but I'm willing to try. Unless you're afraid to face one human in a fair fight. The insult had its intended effect. Kethmoran's face turned purple with rage. Very well, human, but when I defeat you, your princess will watch you die. Actually, Princess Zara said, stepping into view of the camera, the combat will be according to ancient galactic law. That means I get to choose the type of challenge. What do you choose? Kethmoran asked suspiciously. Princess Zara smiled. A battle of minds, not bodies. You and Jake will compete in the challenge of leadership. Each of you will be given a crisis scenario and must solve it using only the resources available. The solution judged most effective and moral wins. Jake blinked in surprise. He had never heard of the challenge of leadership, but he trusted Princess Zara completely. Agreed, Kethmoran said confidently. I have led armies and conquered worlds. No human can match my strategic mind. 2 hours later, they met aboard a neutral space station orbiting between the two fleets. The challenge of leadership was overseen by the High Arbiters, ancient beings who had been resolving disputes between species for thousands of years. The scenario was simple but devastating. A plague had broken out on a colony world with multiple species. Resources were limited, panic was spreading, and different species were blaming each other for the disease. How would they restore order and save lives? Prince Kethmaran went first. His solution was swift and brutal. Quarantine each species separately, execute anyone who showed signs of infection, and maintain order through military force. Efficient, one of the arbiters noted. But at great cost in lives, then it was Jake,